all of the different artifacts from this workspace are available one click away inside of Teams. It's a great place for me to be able to find things and collaborate without having to leave the flow of my work. But if I navigate over to the OneLake Data Hub, I can see all of the best data my organization has available to me, and so can everybody else in my organization. So if I'm trying to do a new analytics project, I have one source to go to find the certified, promoted, all the best data to use. I can open up one of these data sets, the sales lakehouse, and I can see the description, the tables in the data, but also all the related artifacts that are connected to it. So let's open this sales forecast, and now I have a fully interactive report right inside of Teams. I didn't have to leave my flow of work, super easy to use. But we can do even more. So we've integrated Data Activator inside of Power BI, so now I can set alerts right on top of my data, again, without even leaving Teams. So let's set a threshold, say 80,000, so if my forecast goes up, I'm gonna get a new notification. And again, that's gonna be delivered to me right inside of Teams. You saw that in Justina's demo. But we can do even more. What if I wanna create a PowerPoint presentation to present this information? Just with one click, I can create a new PowerPoint and start picking just specific charts from all my different reports and adding them in there. So I have my line chart, let's add this table here, and I can lay them out just like I like to really make a data-driven presentation and updating data every time something changes. Presentation mode, it's all fully interactive. Again, a great way for data-driven presentations. But now let's switch to Excel. We've also made all of your Fabric data available one click away inside of Excel. So I can find the same sales lakehouse I just saw in the Data Hub, because the Data Hub is now here in Excel. And I want to import some of that data. So I'm going to pick the table and the columns, and I can create a new Excel table. All that security and lineage all is flowing through. And the best part is it's all refreshable. It's not actually a copy, no more data silos. It's just a table, but it's fully refreshable. It's connected back to Fabric. And that means I can use all of my favorite Excel features. I can create a pivot chart, a pivot table, just drag and drop. So me and everybody in my organization that knows how to work with Excel can connect to all of our Fabric data. So as you've seen, if you put your data into Fabric, it's now available to all your business users through everywhere inside of Office. This is a great way to drive connected productivity without duplicating data. Prepare this for some of my analysis. Now I could use the UI in Power Query to do so, but I'd rather use use CoPilot because it's much easier. So what I'm going to do is just start by asking a question here. And I'm going to ask for the duration of trips. There's a start date and an end date. And just by asking for the duration, CoPilot's smart enough to look in the table and give me the calculation between start and end. I didn't even have to ask for those specific columns. It just built that calculation for me. I can do simple stuff as well, like just asking to rename a column. So let's rename that column I just created. But now I can do something even more complicated. Let's ask for some grouping of the durations to be able to slice and dice in my report. And CoPilot used its intelligence to say, hey, a short trip is under 10 minutes, a long trip is over 20 minutes. So it's using its intelligence and again, building that transformation for me. Now I have the temperature in Fahrenheit, the time of the trip. Maybe I want to ask to convert that to Celsius. Now again, CoPilot has knowledge of what that formula is. It just applied it for me. And I can do, so this is really cool here. I'm going to ask to filter out the trips on rainy days. There's a precipitation column in the data. CoPilot's smart enough to know that rainy days had precipitation, so it filters only to days with no precipitation. This is really intelligent, right? We can do even more. Let's switch back to the diagram view here. And I've got multiple tables of data, and maybe I want to join them together. So I'm just going to ask CoPilot to create a new query that joins some of this data, maybe my members and my trips, because I have member details for each person that rented a bike. And automatically, CoPilot saw there was a matching column, and it built the join for me. And now I can use the UI to kind of pick which specific columns I want, and it's all multimodal, right? So I can rename things manually, or I could kind of work with these steps manually, so it's all kind of just this really fluid experience. Now I'm going to ask for one more query here where I want some bike statistics, and I'm going to ask for group bys from the bike ID column. CoPilot joined two tables together, built all the group bys, and now I have like a cool statistics table just like that. So it's transforming working with my data, just asking for what I'm looking for, and CoPilot's building these formulas for me. Super cool. I could come in here and start coding on my own, but like I said, I'm not a particularly proficient Python coder, so I'm going to ask CoPilot for some help. And so the first thing I'm going to do, let's make a little space here, I'm going to ask to get started, and I'm going to get some suggested visualizations of my data from CoPilot. So I'm going to say, go look at this data frame and tell me what I might be able to do with it. Now it's given me a bunch of different suggestions based on my data, and it's actually described my data a little bit to me. And I can just ask for any of these suggestions and say, hey, help me build some code to go do any of these. So I'm going to start by asking for a column chart, looking at the number of trips by start station. And automatically CoPilot has generated that code, and I can go insert it into the notebook. I can look at the code and go ahead and run it. And so I didn't have to know how to write that code. I just asked what I was looking for, and now I have this beautiful visualization here that helps me understand the shape of my data. Now, I'm going to go a little further here. I'm going to ask it suggested a heat map, so I'm going to ask for the heat map it suggested. And I want to see a heat map of trip duration by start and end station, so I can see, maybe where bikes are starting, where they're ending. Again, it's giving me that code. I can look at it here and just hit run. And now it's going to give me this beautiful heat map that's fully interactive. I can zoom in, zoom out. This is delightful for me as a user. I mean, when this popped up, I was like, oh, this is so cool. And there's actually some outliers in the data. It turns out there's longer trips starting from San Jose State University, of all things, right? But I can play with that data. And again, you can see it's really fluid to just ask for what I'm looking for, get this code generated for me. The task pane is great, but I'd really like to work just in the canvas here. I can do that as well, just by typing %% code. I can now just ask for what I want. And now I'm going to do something a little more complicated. I'm going to ask for a new forecast. I want it to use the Profit forecasting library from Facebook. I never used this before. And I'm going to describe the output I want the table to come in. So it's actually doing a couple group bys along the way. And it generated some pretty complicated code.
A lot of code.
I would never know how to do this on my own. I had to shape the data. I actually had to kind of iterate through things multiple times to get it to take in all these additional factors I wanted it to account for. But now it's generated that forecast for me. So again, I can just ask for, hey, let's see a visualization of this forecast, see a line chart of it. And again, it's giving me the code, so now I can see, get an idea of what the forecast data that's been generated. And finally, I'm going to ask CoPilot to give me some code to just write that data back to the lakehouse, because now it's in that one copy, and we can use it in all the other workloads that we have. This is mind-blowing in terms of up-leveling my skill. It's kind of turned me into a data scientist overnight. I want to create a new report, and I'm going to use CoPilot to do so. So let's click New Report. Obviously, I could drag and drop and start on my own, but using CoPilot's way more fun. So I'm going to open the CoPilot task pane, and I'm going to ask CoPilot for some suggestions of different report pages I might want to build. It's going to look at my data. It sees all the different things I have in the schema, and it's suggesting, in fact, it suggested one of the pages to look at the trip forecast so we can optimize where our bikes are. Just by submitting that prompt to CoPilot, it builds this beautiful report page for me.
I wouldn't know how to build something so
exactly.
beautiful.
It's a great starting point. And so, might not have everything I want in it, but oh my, it's beautiful. It saves me a bunch of time, and it's fully, multimodal. So now I can use this as my starting point, and I can start dragging and dropping and configuring this for my needs. Maybe I want to bring the number of historical trips so I can compare it to the forecast and see the overall shape. Super easy to use. Let's ask for another page. This time I'm going to ask for trip statistics and station status, right? Because it's kind of interesting to look at our different start stations and end stations. And again, another beautiful page. It's included some slicers, so I can slice and dice by city. I've got this map, so I can zoom in and zoom out on where the trips are starting. And there's this really interesting trend. You can see that people are renting bikes in the morning for the morning rush hour and the afternoon for the afternoon rush hour. But I want to do some analytics here, so let's drag and drop the average trip duration. This is based on real data. It's real data. Turns out there's this big spike at 2 a.m. This is kind of interesting. What's happening at 2 a.m.? I guess maybe the bars are letting out. So I can cross-highlight, and if I look over, I see that it turns out like University, San Jose State University, you saw that earlier.
Can you ask the CoPilot?
Yeah, exactly. I have a suspicion here, but this is really cool. We've built in the ability to ask CoPilot questions about data in the report. So I can come here and say, ask, which stations have the highest percentage of long trips? And that data is kind of buried in the report. There's a little bit of math needed, but CoPilot's going to look at the data, and it built this calculation for me on the fly and gave me an answer right here. So I can see indeed University in Emerson. There's some stuff in Palo Alto, so it kind of confirms my suspicion. Way easier than exporting it to Excel and doing all this manipulation manually. Now I'm going to do one more thing here. I'm going to add a new visualization to the page. This is our first CoPilot powered visualization. And what it allows me to do is ask CoPilot with a prompt, and it's going to look at the data in the report and build a narrative summary that's included in my report. So I gave it a prompt to look at 5 bullets about station status. It's given me my 5 bullets with interesting facts about the data. Everything is cited, so I can hover and see where CoPilot's taking the data from, so I can kind of double check its math if I'm not confident. And it's now built in, it'll update as the data changes.